picture this. You find the perfect Cape Coral home. It's waterfront, it's Gulf access, and you got it at a great price. You're under contract and you are already picturing the boat in your backyard. Then you discover the flood insurance alone is $9,000 a year. The seawall is in desperate need of repairs, and that's going to cost $45,000. And the Gulf access that you bought, it's an hour and 20 minutes just to get out of the canal system, and then you have 3 no-wake zones. So here's what most buyers think when they're shopping Cape Coral. I'll find a good price, get a solid inspection, do my research on the neighborhood, and I'll be fine. And honestly, in most real estate markets in America, that's enough for you. But on the other hand, Cape Coral is not most real estate markets. This city has 400 miles of canals, FEMA flood zones that change literally street to street and sometimes even house to house. An insurance market that's unlike anything I have ever dealt with in my years in real estate. And a canal system where the label Gulf access can mean 15 minutes to open water or 90. And you can't tell the difference from a listing photo. And then there are layers here that will cost you tens of thousands of dollars if you don't know what to look for. Hi, I'm JB Kolev. I sell real estate in both Cape Coral and Fort Myers, which means I see this market from both sides every day. I've watched buyers from out of state make these exact same mistakes, and I've been through it too, because nobody ever gave the full picture before they bought, and that is what today's video is for. So we are walking through the 7 biggest, most expensive, and most preventable mistakes that buyers make here in Cape Coral. Not just naming them, I'm actually going to show you how to catch every single one before it catches you. So stay to the end because mistake number 7 is the one that surprises even buyers who think that they've done everything right. And it's the most Cape Coral specific thing on this list, and most people have no idea it's even possible. So before we get into mistake number 1, if you're seriously considering buying in Cape Coral and you don't have our free relocation guide yet, you need to go grab it. It's in the link in the description. It covers everything, including the canal systems, flood zones, neighborhoods, everything that you need to understand this market. All right, mistake number 1. And I'm going to say something that's going to surprise a lot of buyers who think that they've done their research. Gulf access is not a feature, it's a category. And inside that category, there are 2 completely different types of realities. They don't cost the same, perform the same, or even live the same. So when you see Gulf access in a listing, that label tells you almost nothing. But here's what it actually breaks down to. First, direct Gulf access. No bridges, no locks. This is the premium tier. You pull out of your dock and within minutes, you're at the Caloosahatchee River and you're in open water relatively quickly. No obstacles, and boats of any size work here, so that's often why it's referred to as sailboat access. This is what most people picture when they hear Gulf access. And it's absolutely real, but it comes with a price tag, and you're gonna find it primarily in Southeast and Southwest Cape Coral. Then you have Gulf access with bridges. So it's still technically Gulf access, but the bridge clearance matters enormously here. So if you have a boat that has a T-top or a tower, you need to know the height of the lowest bridge on your specific route. And you have to factor in tides as well. So some canals have clearances as low as 9 to 11 feet, and even just 1 inch can strand your boat or even destroy it. And sadly, I have seen this happen here in Cape Coral. And then of course we have to address freshwater canals. No, these are not Gulf access, but so many people look and they see this beautiful backyard water view and assume that they are going to have Gulf access. These are actually landlocked and connect through a series of canals and lakes, and they're great for kayaking, paddleboarding, and fishing. But again, you are not getting out to the Gulf without trailering your boat. And sadly, a meaningful number of listings here in Cape Coral are freshwater canal properties that get marked in ways that make buyers think they are getting more than they actually are. So here's why this matters beyond just the boating experience. True, direct, no-bridge Gulf access commands a meaningful price premium over freshwater or those with bridges. Before you fall in love with the listing photo, look at a map or ask your agent to pull the canal map, Walk through the actual route to open water, bridge clearances, time travel to the Caloosahatchee, and confirm it in writing before you confirm it emotionally. And here's the connection. Once you know which canal type you're actually buying, that answer directly shapes the next mistake on this list. Because the canal type isn't just about boating, it determines what you're going to pay for insurance, and that number might genuinely shock you. Now, if you've paid any attention to the Florida market, you know insurance is a hot topic out here. And so this is one that catches buyers the most off guard. And it's not because they are ignoring it, they think about it, but they think about it too late or they look at the wrong number. And by the time they get the real quote, they're already emotionally attached to the property. So here's the reality. Cape Coral is not a normal insurance market. More than half of the properties here fall into some level of flood zone. And for canal front, waterfront, or low elevation properties, usually in the older properties, you're not buying one insurance policy. You're buying two. You're going to get your homeowner's insurance policy, and you're going to get a separate flood insurance policy. Those are two different bills from two different carriers due at different times, and neither of them is optional if you have a mortgage. So let's talk actual real numbers here. A typical non-waterfront Zone X home in Cape Coral, Zone X meaning it is technically not in a flood zone and carries a much lower flood risk, they may see a homeowner's insurance policy somewhere in the range of $3,500 to $4,500 a year. That's last year's numbers. That's already higher than the national average because we're in a hurricane zone, but it's still manageable. Now take that same square footage on a Gulf Access Canal in a Zone AE, which is a high-risk flood zone, and your homeowner's insurance can run $5,000 to $7,000 or more. Plus, you have to have a separate flood insurance on top of that. And on an older home, so we're just going to say pre-2000 construction, sitting at a below base flood elevation, that flood policy alone can hit $7,500 to $10,000 a year. Now, I'm going to stop right here because I know those numbers sound scary. And again, we're talking about averages over an entire city. I'll tell you from personal experience, my homeowners and flood insurance is much lower than that. I am in an older home, 1964 to be exact. I have flooded and I live on a canal. So definitely don't let those numbers I just said scare you in any capacity. But here's the thing most buyers from out of state don't realize. Those numbers are nowhere in the listing. They are not in the MLS, and there's no field for estimated annual insurance. You have to ask, and you have to ask before you write that offer, not after you've fallen in love with the backyard, because it can make a real difference in your monthly payment. Now, here's something on the good news side of things that I want to make sure every Cape Coral buyer knows. Cape Coral holds a CRS Class 5 rating through FEMA's Community Rating System. So this is one of the highest rankings in Florida. And what that means practically is that NFIP flood insurance premiums in Cape Coral are automatically 25% lower than the base rate because of the city's canal infrastructure and its floodplain management. So most buyers from out of state have never heard of this. And it means Cape Coral is actually more affordable in flood insurance than comparable coastal markets. So the mistake isn't being scared of insurance costs, because I don't think that you should be. Some of these properties are absolutely worth what they cost to insure. The mistake is not knowing what you're actually paying until after the contract is signed. I always tell my buyers, run the insurance math before the offer goes in. Get an actual quote from a local agent who knows Cape Coral flood zones. Factor that monthly number into your payment calculations before you decide what price actually makes sense for you. Now, still on the topic of things attached to the water that buyers don't inspect closely enough, let's talk about the seawall, because this is the one thing that can hit you with a bill you genuinely did not see coming. When buyers tour a waterfront property in Cape Coral, they look at the kitchen, the master bath, they look at the view from the lanai, and almost nobody looks at the seawall. And I get it, it's a concrete wall at the edge of the water. It doesn't look exciting, but the seawall is infrastructure. It's what's holding your backyard in place. And when it fails, and they do fail, the repair bill is not a small ticket item. Seawall replacement in Cape Coral right now runs anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 or more, depending on the length of your water frontage and whether you're on a freshwater or saltwater canal. Saltwater is harder on the structure just because it's more corrosive, more long-term maintenance load. And if the wall has already been patched multiple times, or if there's voiding behind it, meaning the fill material behind the wall is washing away, you may be looking at a full replacement, not a repair. I will tell you a little insider secret. That's why so many of us here in Cape Coral hate the invasive species of the iguanas, because they dig behind our seawalls, and nobody wants that price tag. So a standard home inspection will look at the seawall, but in most cases, it's a visual inspection from the top of the wall. So if you want a real answer, you need a dedicated seawall specialist. So a separate inspection on top of the general home inspection. That runs a few $100s, but on a $400,000 purchase, a few $100s of due diligence might save you $40,000 in surprises after closing. Also, have your agent ask the seller directly, how old is the seawall? Has it been repaired? Are there any active city assessments or open permits on it? A Cape Coral waterfront home with a 30-year-old seawall that's never been touched is a very different purchase than the same home with a 5-year-old cap and a clean specialist report. So here's the bigger picture. A lot of buyers in Cape Coral right now are finding waterfront homes at prices that genuinely look like deals. And in many cases, they are real deal, but some of those deals are priced the way that they are because the seller already knows the seawall is coming. A great price on a waterfront home with a failing seawall is just the cost of future repair hiding inside of a lower purchase price. The number didn't just disappear, it just moved into your column. All right, let's zoom out now for a moment because the next mistake isn't about a specific property feature. It's about how buyers are reading the current Cape Coral market overall. And the misreading is pushing people into bad decisions from both directions. So let me play a pessimist for a second because the coverage of Cape Coral real estate lately has been really rough. The prices are down from the 2022 peak. We know that. We've seen values come back roughly 18% from that high. Inventory is up significantly, although we're trending downwards, and homes are sitting longer. Median days on market went from around 59 to 76 days year over year. Cape Coral was ranked last in one national hotness ranking for mid-sized cities in mid-2025. And in 2025, Cape Coral had nearly twice as many listing failures as successful sales, the widest gap in all of Southwest Florida. That's not a spin, that's just what's happening in the data. So it's crashing, right? No, and here's why that distinction matters for buyers specifically. The mistake isn't being aware of the correction. The mistake is using that information wrong. And there are two bad versions of this. So version number one, panic avoidance. The market is correcting, prices might drop more, I'm just gonna wait. So you sit on the sidelines for another year, and the window you're in right now, where you have genuine negotiating power, seller concessions on the table, and real inventory to choose from, that window closes. Because Cape Coral's long-term fundamentals are strong. By 2030, the city is projected to hit 250,000 residents. This isn't a market in permanent decline. It is a market in a correction cycle within a long-term growth trend. Version number two is the opposite mistake. It is the FOMO buying. Prices dipped, this must be the bottom, I need to lock in something right now. And you rush into the wrong property or you overpay relative to current comps just to be in the market. So the right read is this. The buyer leverage right now is real, but it's not infinite. You have negotiating room that didn't exist in 21 or 22. You have time to do proper due diligence. You can negotiate on price, on seller's concessions, on closing costs. And sellers are responding. About 3/4 of the sellers who are closing deals right now are accepting price reductions in the 5 to 7% range. Use that leverage. Don't just sit on it until it's gone. All right, now we're going to get into one of the most specific, most insider knowledge things on this list. And I promise you, almost no buyers from out of state, myself included when I moved here, know this even exists. And it's called the 50% rule. So let's imagine you find an older Cape Coral home. Let's say it was built in 1985. It's in a flood zone. It's priced below market because it needs a little work. And you're thinking, I can get it at a great price, renovate it to modern finishes, and come out ahead. Classic fix and flip value play. Until the substantial improvement rule kicks in. And here's what that is. If you renovate a home that's in a FEMA flood zone and the cost of those improvements exceed 50% of the structure's pre-improvement assessment value, the entire structure must be brought into current base flood elevation compliance. And if the home isn't already at the right elevation, meaning it may need to be lifted, that process costs $50,000 to $150,000 or more on top of your renovation budget. So here's how the math plays out. If you buy a home, you are going to look at your assessed value. It's going to be divided between structure and land. You take the one for structure, and let's say it's assessed at $200,000. To calculate what they consider market value, you add 20%, so we're talking $240,000. Divide that by 2, you can improve your property up to $120,000. But let's say you were planning a $160,000 renovation. That is more than 50% of the assessed value, so it's over the threshold. And the city of Cape Coral now requires you to bring the entire structure into flood elevation compliance before you can complete the permitted work. Your $160,000 renovation just became $240,000 to $300,000. The deal that looked like it was a value play is now upside down. And here's the part that catches even the savviest of buyers. It's cumulative. If a previous owner already did significant permitted work on the property, that counts towards the 50% threshold too. You need to pull the permit history on any older property you're planning to renovate in a flood zone, not just your planned work, but everything that's been done before you. Now, I will note, this is usually accumulation for 5 prior years. However, in 2022, they wiped everyone's slate clean because of Hurricane Ian. So I just want to be clear on this, though. Buying an older property in Cape Coral is not inherently a mistake. That is not what I'm saying at all. And there are genuinely great deals on older homes in this market right now that are in great condition. But you have to understand the 50% rule before you model the renovation math, not afterwards. And you need an agent who knows how to flag this and pull the permit history before you're already under contract, emotionally committed, and funds tied up. Which brings us directly to the next mistake, because a lot of buyers could have avoided mistake 3, 4, and 5 if they had the right guidance from the start. So I want to be careful here because I'm not talking about bad agents. I'm talking about agents who are perfectly capable, just in their market. The mistake is using a buyer's agent who doesn't have a deep current knowledge of Cape Coral specifically. That's a different problem, and it's a more common one than most buyers realize. There's a few different versions of this. You've got the Fort Myers agent working a Cape Coral referral, the agent who's licensed in Florida but hasn't sold in Cape Coral and the canal system, or even a Cape Coral agent who primarily works up north and doesn't necessarily have a great feel for the canal systems down here. But here's what a Cape Coral specific buyer's agent should be able to do without hesitating. They should be able to pull up a canal map and give you the exact route and pretty close to travel time to the open water from a specific property. They're going to immediately be able to flag whether the home is in a flood X, flood AE, or VE, and exactly what each of those means for your insurance budget. They're going to pull comparable sales in the current corrected market, not 2022 peak pricing. Know the permit history on older homes, identify Seawall age and condition concerns, know which neighborhoods have city utilities and which are still on well and septic, which ones have outstanding assessments or ones that may be coming soon. And that last one, utilities, is one that out-of-town buyers miss consistently. There's parts of Cape that are still on well and septic, and the city is extending water and sewer service into those areas, and there's going to be a special assessment in the pipeline for those properties. That's money you need to know about before you buy, not after your first year of ownership. And I will tell you, agents who aren't specifically selling here in Cape Coral often don't know that, because Cape Coral is a complex market to navigate as an outsider. The canal systems, the flood zone, the insurance market, the correction dynamics, the 50% rule, the seawall questions, those aren't things you can Google your way to understanding over a weekend. You need somebody who sells here, knows the area, and is going to flag the right things at the right moment in the transaction, not after, but before. So I will say, if you're actively looking to buy in Cape Coral and you want to talk through your situation with somebody who sells in this market every day, reach out to us directly. We have the link in our description. No pressure, no pitch, Just a real conversation about what you're looking for. And don't forget, if you're still in research mode, go grab that free Cape Coral relocation guide. It's in the description as well. All right, last one. I saved this one for the end on purpose. This is the one that surprises buyers who think they have done everything right. And it is the single most Cape Coral specific thing on this entire list. If you've watched this far, you've already learned more about Cape Coral real estate than most people who move here without a conversation like this one. But this last mistake still catches buyers who think they've done everything right. 2 homes, same street, same block. One is not in a flood zone, but the house right next door is. And the annual insurance cost difference between those 2 properties is potentially thousands of dollars every single year. And that is not an exaggeration. Cape Coral's flood zone boundaries are drawn at the property level in parts of the city. They follow elevation contours, canal proximity, and how FEMA mapped the terrain. And those boundaries do not follow street lines, subdivision lines, or neighborhood names. They follow the ground. What this means practically, if you're shopping comparable homes in the same neighborhood and you see one priced at $30,000 less than the other one, that price difference may not be a deal. It may be reflecting the fact that they're in a flood zone while the other one isn't. The lower price is actually absorbing the higher ongoing cost. However, the flip side is equally important. Sometimes buyers rule out a property based on price without ever even checking the flood zone. They walk away from the better buy because they assumed flood zone status was based on neighborhood, when the actual FEMA map tells a completely different story. Your agent is going to have access to this, but there are tools for you to check this out yourself. FEMA's Flood Map Center is free, public, and you can search by address. But even that has a nuance. An elevation certificate can modify how your flood insurance is actually priced, even within a Zone AE. A home sitting 2 feet above base flood elevation in a Zone AE can have dramatically lower premiums than one sitting at or below BFE. The zone tells you the category. The elevation certificate tells you the actual cost. And I'll bring this back to what I mentioned in mistake number 2. Cape Coral's CRS Class 5 rating gives all residents a 25% discount on NFIP flood premiums. Most comparable coastal markets definitely don't have this. It doesn't eliminate the flood zone calculus, but it's a meaningful advantage that buyers from out of state consistently underestimate or honestly don't even know about at all. So I want to leave you with this. The flood zone conversation is not a reason to be scared of Cape Coral. It's a reason to understand Cape Coral at a level most buyers don't. Because when you know the flood zones, you know the insurance. When you know the insurance, you know the real cost of ownership. When you know the real cost of ownership, you make a decision that actually works for you, not one that looks good on paper until the first insurance renewal hits. The buyers who win in this market are the ones who do this work before the offer goes in, not after. All right, let's cover all those 7 again real fast. Mistake number 1, assuming Gulf access means the same thing in every listing, because it doesn't. Direct, bridged, freshwater, know exactly what you're buying before you fall in love with the view. Mistake number 2, not running the real insurance map before you make an offer. Go get actual quotes, homeowners and flood, from a local agent who knows Cape Coral flood zones before you're emotionally attached to a property. Mistake number 3, skipping the Seawall. Hire the specialist. A few $100s of dedicated inspection can save you thousands and thousands in post-closing surprises. Mistake number 4, letting the market correction push you into fear or FOMO. The buyer leverage right now is real, so use it strategically, not emotionally. Mistake number 5, the 50% rule. Before you plan any renovation on any older home, or honestly any home at all in a flood zone, pull the permit history and understand your renovation ceiling. Know this before you model the numbers. Mistake number 6, using an agent who doesn't know this market at the level it requires. Cape Coral demands boots on the ground experience. People need to know the canals, the flood zones, the utility status. That's not something you can outsource to someone who's mostly works across the bridge. And mistake number 7, assuming you know the flood zones and they track with the streets and neighborhoods, because they don't. Check the FEMA map at the address level and understand what the elevation certificate means for what you'll actually pay. So every single one of these mistakes is preventable. And here's what I want you to take from this. The buyers who get hurt in Cape Coral aren't the ones who do less research. They're the ones who research the wrong thing. They look at the house and miss the canal type. They look at the price and miss the insurance. They look at the neighborhood and miss the flood zone boundary. The buyers who succeed here are the ones who understand that Cape Coral is a very different kind of market, and they come in prepared for what that actually means. And here's the thing I want to end with, because I don't want you to walk away from this video feeling nervous about Cape Coral. I sell here and I live here because I believe in this market. And once you understand these layers, this becomes one of the most exciting opportunities in all of Southwest Florida. 400 miles of canals, a waterfront lifestyle that would cost 2 or 3 times as much in other coastal markets. A city that's still growing, still building, still evolving into what it's going to become. The fundamentals are real. You just have to know what you're buying. And now you do. So 2 things before I go. If you're still in research mode, don't forget to download our free Cape Coral relocation guide. It covers everything you need to know. The link is in the description below. And if you're past research mode, if you're actively looking and you want to talk through your situation with somebody who knows this market and the canals and the flood zones and all the other things, reach out to us directly. We'd love to hear where you are in the process and see if there's a way we can help. Subscribe if you want more of this. I put honest inside information content about Cape Coral and Southwest Florida every single week. No fluff, no hype, just what you actually need to know. I'll see you in the next one.